Welcome to the PW Fan, the ultimate pro wrestling podcast created by fans for the fans. This is episode 94, and we've got an action-packed show lined up for you. I'm your host, the grumpy old school wrestling fan, collector, barber, and musician, Talk Wrestling, Tim Gilbert.
And I am your host, the architect of pro wrestling podcast, Funko Pop collector, Booker Andy.
All right, and we are currently missing Jeremy, but he got a little caught up, and he will hopefully join us by the end of the episode, so you'll get your no-selling indie wrestling fan fix. All right, ladies and gentlemen, today we will be discussing and reviewing Dark Side of the Ring, Cody Rhodes, the Cody Rhodes documentary, SummerSlam 2023, and more. You know, we talk about Collision and all the shows that we normally talk about. Before we get started, if you could go to youtube.com/thepwfan, comment, like, and hit subscribe. By doing this, you're helping us grow substantially, helping us get on that recommended for you page. You guys and girls are the reason we do this show every week, and with your continued help, we will be able to grow the show even more. Show off some of your love for the PW Fan with our awesome and wearable merch. We've got 5 different unique shirt designs on the PW Fan's exclusive merch website, which is prowrestlingtees.com/thepwfan. We did a photo shoot over the weekend right before SummerSlam. We were all wearing the shirts, Jeremy, Booker, Andy, and myself. It was fun. We went out. Yeah, we walked the city, had pictures done. We went out to eat, and then we went our ways. And Andy and I went back to the house to watch SummerSlam, and Jeremy watched at his house. And so we'll get into that part of the show a little bit later. That was really fun. I thought it was a good pay-per-view. For all other social media, before we get started, go to just search at the PW Fan, where we should pop up on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all that stuff. And don't forget to stick around until the end so we can talk about my classic show of the week. All right, Andy, big show. We're a day late, but we are not short on content because we had an action-packed wrestling weekend, but we're a day late with a big storm that came through. You lost some internet, you lost some power. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, the storm blew through not only Harford County here in Maryland, for those outside of Maryland that don't know, but also southern Pennsylvania as well. It hit you. It hit Jeremy up in Lancaster. But, for me, I lost power from like 6:45 to like 8:30. We usually record at 8. So we just made the decision probably around like 7:45 to not record. And decided to record today instead. You know, things happened.
Well, we wanted to
record yesterday.
We wanted to get the show to the people. You know, we wanted to get the show out to the people that depend on the PW Fan for their daily commute, for their lunch break when they're sitting alone in their car, or maybe they're just maybe they're laying sad and alone in bed at night and just all by their lonesome, and they're having some sort of anguish of some sort, and our show brings them comfort of some kind. That's
a nice thought.
Yeah, of course. Sorry, that was a long loop around nothing. But
started off positive and then got dark real quick. Jeez.
You know, just all the great things that the PW Fan does. All right, Andy, are we starting with Dark Side of the Ring this week?
We are. We're gonna start with Dark Side of the Ring and then the Cody doc, and then into our shows. You think I should stop saying Funko Pop collector? I haven't bought in any in a while.
I mean, you are.
Maybe I should stop.
Maybe you should.
I like them. I just haven't bought them in a while.
Maybe you should say.
I'm not a former. I'm just on a hiatus.
Well, then why don't you say something like you're the Michael Jordan of Funko Pop collecting? Because you have.
I'm not. There's way more out there than me. But out of anyone I know personally, I am the Michael Jordan of Funko Pop collecting.
There you go. As long as you can reach one person. If you can reach one person, let it be yourself.
Exactly. All right. Let's get into Dark Side of the Ring first. You were iffy about this episode. It was about Bash at the Beach 2000, the incident with Hogan, Jeff Jarrett, and Vince Russo in particular. You want to kind of run us through really quick what happened and then your thoughts.
I believe Vince Russo comes in the WCW late '99. Uh, Vince Russo was primarily responsible for the Attitude Era's Crash TV format, just the wild stuff, the sex, the silliness, the raunchy. That was all Vince Russo. However, he had Vince McMahon as a filter of sorts. So he would throw out all these ideas, and Vince would be like, that's too much. Let's maybe change it a little bit. Well, when he didn't have that filter anymore, he would just throw out crazy ideas all the time in WCW, and some of them were not great. You can look up, I mean, you could go on YouTube right now and type in Vince Russo's worst ideas, worst moments. I'm sure somebody has made an hour-long compilation of it. But so
Basically, anything in the last the end of WCW basically is
was it Bash at the Beach '99
Vince
or
Russo.
2000?
It was 2000.
Yeah.
Jeff Jarrett was was Jeff Jarrett the champion walking in, or Hogan?
I believe Hogan is the champ, and Vince Russo wanted Jeff Jarrett to go over. Hogan didn't like the creative. Hogan had final creative control on all of his matches and finishes. If he didn't like something, he had in his contract that he technically had the final say to whether or not he did or did not want to do it. He did not like Vince Russo's idea. He wanted. See, this is where it gets a little weird for me, because when he was on Bubba the Love Sponge show, he said that he didn't know that Jeff was going to lay down. But then in the Dark Side of the Ring,
He didn't know Jeff was going to lay down. No, in the Dark Side of the Ring, you're right. He didn't know Jeff was going to lay down. It, it, he knew that it was going to be some kind of it was supposed to be like Hogan refusing to do it or something, but Vince went up to Jeff Jarrett without anyone else knowing and got in Jeff's ear and was just like, just lay down. So Hogan was supposed to, walk out with the belt, and then eventually would turn to like a thing where he returns and Booker T would end up being champion, but he told Jeff to just lay down, which ended up being a shit show in and of itself. And then Hogan would end up leaving with Bischoff, and while they were gone and on an airplane, Russo, this part was unplanned, came out and kind of trashed Hogan on live TV. It was just a big mess.
Just called him a bald son of a bitch, and that he would never wrestle ever in the WCW again. And apparently, Eric Bischoff was quoted in the episode. He said, "When Hulk's mad, he stays quiet." And
Silent. Yeah.
he was very, very, very quiet after we got off that airplane. I was like, man. And then he went the next day.
The episode wasn't dark. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say the next day he goes on Bubba the Love Sponge episode and tells his side of the story, which Bubba the Love Sponge, not that we want to give this guy any promotion, but I guess because of the whole episode, he did just 2 days ago upload the entire interview of him and Hogan that was clipped for that episode. So if you want to hear Hogan's full side of the story, you can actually find it on YouTube. He's not in the documentary, only recordings of him are.
A clip of it, yeah. But it wasn't a dark episode. It was just more about the incident. It was just an episode about a shit show in the wrestling history.
Yeah, this episode wasn't a tragedy. Like, I would say 99% of them are. This one was more of the backstage inner workings of politics and wrestling and blah, blah, blah.
So the next week's episode, we'll be talking about the finale of this season, which is Marty Jannetty. Now, is that going to be a wild or a dark episode or a mix of both? He's not dead. He's alive. So I think it's just going to be kind of a crazy-ass episode of the things that Marty Jannetty has gotten himself into over time.
Yeah, that one's going to be really interesting. I'm looking forward to it. I was just trying to think if I could add anything on to the Bash of the Beat 2000. I mean, yeah, that's pretty much the gist is Hogan didn't like the way that they had booked the ending of the match. He had his idea. Vince Russo had his idea. Jeff Jarrett lays down and takes the pin. uh, in frustration. And yeah, the fans didn't get a good main event that they wanted to see, and yeah, it was a weird episode. I think it was almost like
It happened a couple times in WCW. I feel bad for the fans that were there, like the finger poke of death and finger poke of doom, and
yeah,
then
that's
you
bad.
got the Jeff Jarrett laying down. It's like, man, like Goldberg
That's
getting
bad.
tased. I don't know.
Well, Goldberg getting tased to me, that's the end of WCW. When Goldberg lost to Nash and the streak ended, for me that felt like the bubble popped of like all the hype of WCW, because then
Yeah,
Goldberg became
it was all
silly.
downhill from there.
Yeah, because right after that, Goldberg becomes silly. Nash does the finger poke of doom and gives the belt back to Hogan after he beats Goldberg for it. So that
Goldberg.
time
Yeah.
that time period's a mess, which leads into the Vince Russo era.
Yep.
Bad.
And then that era has like, David Arquette being champion and
Vince Russo champion.
Vince Russo champion. Yeah. So moving on, let's talk a little bit about the Cody doc. If you guys haven't seen it, it's very, very, very well done. It was very, very good. It's about 2 hours long. I was into it the entire way through. It does go into his time away from WWE and a lot of detail, more detail than I would think WWE would allow. But I'm sure Cody had some say. You can't really tell his story without having the stuff of ROH and New Japan and AEW in. It was very good though. Tim, your thoughts? You watched it more recently than I did.
Yeah, I mean, I love the story of him growing up, and Dusty was his hero, and he loved his dad very much, and then he wanted to become a pro wrestler, and it talks about legacy and him. Well, it talks about him starting in, I think it was OVW, either OVW or FCW.
Yes.
Yeah, and then it gets into legacy. It gets into dashing Cody Rhodes when he had the mask. Do you want a receipt with your paper bag? They said that he was like killing it during that time
But she
too. Like
enjoyed that gimmick. Yeah.
yeah, and he said he
Yeah, he
thought that's
enjoyed
kind
that
of where
gimmick.
he thought that's where the character was gonna go more, and then it became Stardust, and then he leaves, and then Andy, you want to talk about how they showed a bunch of AEW stuff? It's pretty cool.
Yeah, so they talk about, like I said, they talk about his time on the indies, and he was basically wrestling
Oh
every
yeah,
promotion he
I
possibly
forgot
could,
they
big or
covered a
small.
lot. They covered a lot of his indie run, a lot of it.
Yeah, what started, like, he had this list with all these wrestlers on the indie scene that he wanted to face. Adam Cole, Kurt Angle at the time was a free agent, Roderick Strong. I think Chris Hero at the time was on there before coming to WWE. And he would go to every single promotion, big or small, and eventually he would make his way to New Japan for Wrestle Kingdom. And New Japan was big on Dusty Rhodes, and they actually gave him the idea for the American Nightmare gimmick, since they told him, your father was the American Dream, you do American Nightmare, and that kind of, to him, began that whole American Nightmare journey and kind of like figuring out the character a lot. Then he would team up with Bullet Club, and that would eventually lead to All In, which they talk about. And All In led to AEW, and they talk briefly about his exit. He says you can't talk about anything but like specific, but he says he just wants everyone to know that the only reason why he left was something personal. So any other rumor out there he wanted to get across wasn't true. And they talk about how Vince McMahon flew to him to try to get him back. And his whole American Nightmare gimmick was what Vince, quote unquote, was buying. That's exactly what he wanted. And Cody didn't want to change anything. That's what Vince didn't want to change anything either. Then that leads to WrestleMania, and then they talk about the shoulder or the pec tear, and then just about a little bit after the Roman Reigns stuff, um, it would end. It was very good, very, very, very good.
I enjoyed it a lot.
Anything to add? That was pretty much everything.
No, I just thought it was a really good, insightful documentary. I think if you maybe weren't feeling Cody or didn't really care about the story and his dad and the legacy and all that, I think it would really kind of get you into it a little bit more if you watched it. So I definitely recommend it.
Well, one of my friends wasn't that into Cody, and he watched this and likes him a little bit better now. So it's very well done. So check it out if you haven't. I'm sure most people have by now.
Shout out to Corey.
To Corey, yes, my buddy Corey. So that wraps up the stuff I want to talk about before getting into our shows. I'll mention real quick. Vince McMahon had like back surgery, I believe, and so he's away from WWE. I don't know how much input he can give at the moment.
He also, according to PWInsider.com, was served with paperwork from the federal government.
Yes,
he's got searched. I should have pulled the actual article up. But yeah, since we're on the subject, I did see that he's in some sort of legal trouble once again. Jamie, if you want to expand on that.
As we get going, I'll bring it up. Let's get into Raw though. Raw would open up with Logan Paul last weekend. By the way, as I always say before pay-per-view, and most of these WWE shows are going to be a go-home show for SummerSlam, which took place this past Saturday. So just as a heads up, yes. So here we go, Tim. Serve subpoena. Vince McMahon served subpoena search warrant amid federal probe.
What website is that? Just so we can give the proper credit.
This is Washington Post.
All right, so the Washington.
This is the Washington Post right now. I'm trying to scan through very quickly of what it could possibly be about, but I cannot find it without taking a break to actually look. But so maybe next week we can talk a little bit more about it and get more details.
Vince.
So yes, Raw. Vince, yeah. Vince has had a rough couple, like 2 years maybe.
Vince's elderly years have not been good to him so far. Although he did just sell his company for a bunch of money, so I guess it depends on who you ask.
Okay, so Raw, Logan Paul opened up the show to talk about his upcoming match with Ricochet. Ricochet would end up coming out, and they would have a promo battle back and forth, which actually got me excited for their match more than I actually was before. I thought it was a good segment for Ricochet to shine a little bit more. Logan Paul would bring up Ricochet's fiance, who, I'm sorry, I forget her name, but she's the announcer for Superstars entrances and for the winners. And basically Logan Paul tried to, get into Ricochet's head, saying that at the end of their match, she's going to be saying his name. And the two would end up brawling in the end. But I did enjoy this segment. I thought it was well done. And for once, the Judgment Day didn't open up the show. I feel like they open it up every single week. After that, though, speaking of, had a Judgment Day segment.
Mommy has a new look. I'm in.
Mommy does have a new look, and you thought it was just, well, are you talking about her hair?
Yeah, I'm in. Yes.
We saw it at SummerSlam, and you were like, no, it's just not done or whatever. And I was like, then I saw her on Raw last night, and I was like, it is. She did some cutting to it. Yeah, it does look good. But Judgment Day would come out. Each would talk about their dominance And then Raquel Rodriguez would run out and take out Rhea Ripley, one of the first women that can actually go toe to toe with her. She kind of destroyed Rhea, so that was a little bit different to see. Gunther and Chad Gable agreed backstage to a 5-minute challenge to see if Chad Gable could last 5 minutes in the ring with Gunther, because he did not think he could. So that would come later. Throughout the night, though, there were a couple of, I believe, 3 Ronda and Shayna video packages all throughout the night, which I thought were great, actually. Now we'll talk about their match later, but I thought the video packages leading to their match were done very well. It talked about their history of Shayna being a fighter before Ronda even got there and all that stuff, and Ronda's UFC career and Shayna being her training partner. It was really good.
And we'll get into when we get into
something to add, Tim?
No, I just was going to say when we get into the pay-per-view, we'll talk about the match, that's later on in the show. But I just thought the MMA thing is cool up until it actually comes nutcracking time, and you got to do the thing.
I think the MMA thing's cool in MMA promotions.
But I'm just saying it's a good build. They're building good to this match that we're going to review. That's
the thing. That's why I was disappointed.
The execution
because these packages were good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So we would have a Brock Lesnar segment, which when he comes out, he starts talking about his own accolades over the years. He calls out Cody Rhodes and basically wants to just shake his hand before their match on SummerSlam. And they do end up shaking hands, but as Brock goes to walk away, Cody blocks his shoulder, and Brock, bumps forward through it. And when Brock gets outside the ring, Cody would end up doing a dive and brawling with Brock a little bit as one last little bout between the two before their match on SummerSlam, which we will get to. I thought their stuff has been done very well. The build, even for a third match, they were still able to build on the previous stuff, and I thought they did a good job at it over these past couple months since Mania, I guess you could say. So like I mentioned earlier, Gunther and Chad Gable would have a 5-minute challenge. Chad Gable would end up lasting the 5 minutes with Gunther, but then Gunther basically got angry and would have a actual kind of mini match with him, I guess. But during that 5 minutes, I thought it was one of the best matches of the night. Chad Gable, we've talked about him. He's kind of like the I think people forget sometimes how good he is. And it could be that, Olympian in him. But no, Chad Gable's great.
Chad Gable reminds me of Nada, and I don't mean on the mic because that's two completely different things, but Chad Gable reminds me a lot of Lance Storm in the way that he's a guy that can really have a great match and he's killer in the ring, but then for some reason, he'll get stuck with these weird gimmicks or just something I don't know. I just wish they would just let him be himself. I felt like Lance Storm in WWE never just got to be Lance Storm, because they wouldn't let him talk. First of all, they made him be silent, and then they had him do the un-American
I'd say
thing.
mic wise, they're nothing alike.
No,
but
I just mean as a
book sometimes is similar.
Yeah, I just mean as a talent who's a great wrestler who doesn't get used in the right way, but they probably better than almost everybody in the ring.
But every time they do get used, you're just like, what the hell? Why aren't they doing anything with them?
But again, it's weird. Matt Bourne in with the Doink Dark Side of the Ring thing. Again, that's a guy who was a great worker who they gave a silly gimmick to. I don't know. At least
he's not Shorty G anymore, man.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm referring to as stupid. But
he's back to Chad Gable, which is I'm pretty sure it's his actual name.
I'll never forget when he said you can call me Shorty G, and then he did the tongue flicker, and I was like, oh, I was like, this so bad.
Such a Vince idea.
He was trying to do the tongue thing he was sexy, and I was like, oh God.
But So yeah, that was a very good match. We'll talk about more about Chad Gable next week because I don't know, Tim, if you've been able to see Raw yet without giving anything away, but I watched it today, and Chad Gable would play a big role during Raw, which was a great Raw in my opinion. But yeah, we'll talk about more about him next week. Becky Lynch would defeat Trish Stratus instantly via DQ from Zoe Stark. Trish basically only got in the ring because she had to, and right when the bell rang, Zoe Stark would interfere so that Trish didn't really need to have a match. She thought she fulfilled what she had to, but Adam Pearce is now forcing Trish to have a real match in 2 weeks from last Monday, so it'll be next week as we're doing this, while they're in Canada. So her and Becky will actually go toe to toe then. And then the main event was Seth Rollins and Sami Zayn teaming up to defeat Dominic Mysterio and Damian Priest. Is it just me, or like these main events of Raw always like the same, just like with people switched around? It's always like someone against the Judgment Day, or it's like Kevin and Sammy, or it's like Sammy and Cody, or like Seth and Kevin. Like,
I mean, every
you know what I mean?
every name, faction, and group tag team that you just said is a main eventer or a top guy or somebody who draws ratings or just like one of the most popular people in
So I
general.
mean, I guess it makes sense of why they're in the main event.
That's their people. Yeah. That's their guys now that they rely on to like. You're the Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Randy Orton, John Cena of this era. You need to like be the guys that like end the show every week.
Well, it's like without spoiling too much, like this past Raw from yesterday, the main event was Cody, Seth, and
Seth is another.
It was
one.
supposed to be Sammy, but they took Sammy out, so it was Cody, Seth, and Shinsuke teaming up against Finn, Damon, and Dominic in the main event of the show.
Dude, Dominic Mysterio, dude, went from a guy who everybody couldn't stand to we all kind of thought the character was funny. Now everybody's like, this guy's great. And God,
dude, when he first turned heel, I was like, this is awful.
But yeah, now it's awesome, and it was totally. I believe this way more than I ever believed his like superhero Dom character or whatever. But God, he's on so much television. Like he's got to be so pumped just being him.
Oh yeah, yeah. He's on Raw, and then he's on NXT tonight defending his North American title.
And he's not just like on Raw; he's like in big parts of Raw.
Well, because Judgment Day is the biggest faction on Raw.
Right.
So that wraps up Raw. Dynamite this week was Dynamite 200. Is that kind of crazy to think? It's been 4 years of Dynamite. We've had 200 episodes of Dynamite already. I remember watching the first episode with you.
Me too. It's changed a lot.
Cody versus Sammy Guevara was the first match.
Sammy Guevara. Throwback for the old listeners.
Well, speaking of, the first match was Chris Jericho and teaming up with Takeshita against Sammy Guevara and Daniel Garcia. They would defeat them. Then we would have a segment from Jack Perry. Jack Perry would come out the week before. Jerry Lynn had come out, said he would basically take care of Jack Perry. So Jerry Lynn comes out this week while Jack's in the ring, and he says, he can't wrestle Jack Perry, but there is a ECW Hall of Famer that is still an active wrestler that can, and out comes RVD. He comes out to Walk by Pantera. I wonder how much money that cost.
Yeah, seriously.
To use.
Especially now that they're on tour.
But the crowd was hot for it.
Yeah.
Right. The crowd was really hot for this, though. RVD would come in. He would end up, I believe, going for a spin kick at one point, which actually looked good for a guy that's, I think he's 52. I think I looked up his age. But he wouldn't actually come to blows with Jack Perry. But I believe we're getting it this week. Tomorrow night, actually, as we record this. So that I'm actually kind of looking forward to that. It's going to be for the FTW Championship, and so I don't think it'd be the main event, but I wouldn't be surprised if it opened up the show. Um, Moving forward, we had Trent Beretta defeating John Moxley and Penta in a triple threat anything goes match, it was surprising that Trent won, not Moxley. Then we had an MJF promo segment, which
Oh, you want to skip right over
what?
that? You want to skip right over that match?
Oh, you want to talk about the triple threat? You can talk about it.
I feel bad talking about it without Jeremy being here to even out the opinion. Now, if we have new listeners joining, I feel like it's important to point out, and we haven't said this in a while, one thing about this show that I think makes it cool is it's the PW fan, so the pro wrestling fan. We're coming at this with 3 different viewpoints as a pro wrestling fan, which is why we do the silly intro and introduce ourselves and what kind of wrestling we like, basically. So
Correct.
Andy likes a good storyline, but he wants good wrestling too, and he doesn't want to get his intelligence.
Well, I like a good
insulted.
storyline, and then you tell the story in the ring.
Right.
Yeah,
So
there's a nice. I like when there's a nice payoff.
so for you, like Bloodline at its peak, that's like great wrestling. You're like for
It's
you,
great.
that's like yeah, that's
Great.
good stuff. So I'm
When
more of
Sammy took the chair to Roman, like that was fantastic.
yeah, I'm a lot like you on that. However, I can appreciate uh just straight up bangers for being a banger, like with not a lot of story going into it. For instance, I'll get accused of being a cornet stan, which I do love me some corny. However, I actually don't agree with him on everything. I loved the Osprey and uh, Omega
Well,
match.
that's the thing. I have to
So
go into it knowing okay, there's no story. This is just going to be, some wrestling.
yeah, so I
But
like both.
when you say there's a story and then it's just like craziness, I don't like it.
Yeah, I can watch wrestling for wrestling's sake. However, where I what I hate is silly, like really silly stuff. If you listen to the show, you know that. And then gore, blood, and guts just for the sake of it, where there's no point. Like just people blading everywhere, and it's just like, I don't know. It's like trashy to me almost. Like it reminds me of just bad like backyard wrestling when I was a kid. People would like bring over these VHS tapes and be like, "Dude, look at this," and I'd be like, "This sucks. I do not want to watch this." But yeah, it just always makes me think of that death matches. I know.
It's just
I'm
not
sorry.
wrestling to me. It's just like it's just fighting and hurting themselves for no reason.
Now, Jeremy, and I feel bad because he's not here to voice his opinion, but if we're talking about the trio of fandom here, Jeremy is pretty open-minded and down with everything. Like he'll watch guys doing
He
crazy
likes hardcore
moves,
matches and stuff. He likes
hardcore
like street
matches.
fights and
He'll appreciate a comedy segment, and that's why when it seems like Andy and I roll, I always think it's good to have Jeremy here to kind of balance it out. But I don't know where we were going with that.
there's some stuff we all agree on sometimes. There's some stuff that even Jeremy is like, I'm not about it, but
I mean,
it's rare.
some of it is blatantly bad, and it's one of those things. Like it's like, do we need a fourth guy?
Like Adam Cole and Chris Jericho at what was it, Double or Nothing?
That was just bad.
We did not like.
But I don't feel like we need a fourth guy on the show who just likes everything. Like, oh, come on, it was great. I'm like, how? How was it great? Like, so I think that we split it up enough, on opinions.
Yeah.
I always like when
did you want to add anything to this Moxley match though?
No, yeah.
Sorry.
So that's the whole. So that my big dissertation about the trio of, the trifecta of wrestling fandom. So yeah, like this match was not for me. I'll say that. I just thought like also Trent.
Crowd loved it.
Like Trent though,
Yeah.
like what the hell?
Better than Chuck Taylor.
I guess. Yeah, the whole thing. There's no spots in particular that I could like point out that I didn't like. Just what was the part where I sent you a clip of it earlier. It was like a hardcore spot. It just was weird.
I don't remember.
But Jeremy, if Jeremy was here,
Was it
because I
during
saw
this match?
Yeah, I saw Jeremy like
Was
the
it during this match or was it? No.
I saw Jeremy like the video of it too before I had even said anything. So Jeremy liked this match. I wish he was here to give his assessment.
Yeah, I'm going through really quick to see if I can find anything, but that would take too much time. Okay. Well, moving forward, maybe we can get Jeremy's opinion if he ends up popping up on here soon. We had an MJF promo segment where he talks about how he lost a match for him and Adam Cole against FTR. Or no. Yeah, it was against FTR, correct?
Yes.
And then he would also, again, talk about something he hasn't talked about in a while, but about his like teen years and being bullied and kind of like basically, well, it made me hate everyone in the world and kind of become bitter. And Adam Cole kind of made him realize that not everyone is evil. That was kind of the gist of it. Am I right?
Yeah, he was
So he
like,
calls out Adam Cole.
yeah, he's like, I don't know. I think they're
'Cause
playing into.
he talked about the quarter story, and just basically, Adam Cole changed his opinion of people in general, I guess. But he would call out Adam Cole, tell him to come out, and basically offers Adam Cole a match in the main event at All In. What's your
That's
opinion
what
of
it
this as
was.
the main event of
The main
All In?
event of All In.
It's the
I mean,
it's the main event of All In.
that's.
MJF Adam Cole.
I mean, it's a great match. To me, I feel like I'm trying to think of like an alternative of something that I would think would be even bigger.
I think MJF and Punk to unify the title would have been better.
But yeah, I just don't think they have the time to get there.
Yeah, I mean, I have my feeling is Cole actually will be the one to turn on MJF and prove that MJF was right about people. That'd be a good little twist.
And then he's emo.
And then MJF just goes back to hating everyone.
Yeah, he's emo MJF.
I wouldn't go as far as emo, but
he grows his hair out. He grows his hair out and gets a one bang over one eye and changes his theme song to My Chemical Romance. And then, dude, or Hawthorne Heights, maybe. Yes.
Cut my wrist and black my eyes. Yeah,
I'm wearing a Cadbury.
This is why we don't call you Booker. This is why we don't call you Booker, Tim.
That's a great ideas like that,
Vince Russo.
All right, bro. Listen, he comes back.
Listen, bro.
It's wrestling.
Terrible. All right, let's move forward though from MJF. The Elite would end up defeating Jeff Jarrett, Jay Lethal, and Satnam Singh. And then Aussie Open would successfully defend their ROH tag team titles from Commander and Vikingo. And then our main event of Dynamite was a AEW Women's Championship match. Toni Storm, the champion, versus Hikaru Shida. And surprisingly, on TV, the title changed hands, and Hikaru Shida is now a two-time.
This doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make sense. I don't understand what they're doing with the women's division. It feels forgotten about. I just don't. And I know there's been rumored on Ringside News, where I get some of my wrestling information on the dirt sheets. There's issues with, like, I read something that someone went to confront Tony Khan about the women's division stuff, and they actually got sent home for kind of questioning it, which is weird if that's true. Also, isn't Kenny in charge of the women's division? Why wouldn't they go to him first
and then
have Kenny go to Tony?
I didn't think he was in charge of the women's division any longer. I thought he was only doing the video game for a while. He might be back to doing the women, though, now that the video game's out.
I just think that if he was, they would go to him before going to Tony, and then you have Kenny and Tony talk about it. But There's something weird going on with the women's division. I think some people are worried about it starting to feel like, say, the Divas.
Like it's not
Apparently.
feeling like the
Important.
right.
The past few weeks, I think women have gotten I think Britt Baker wrestled for like 2 minutes, like the
Yeah,
other week.
but all the women right now of WWE are pretty upset that they weren't on the pay-per-view that we're going to review. So it's not. I don't think it's exclusively an AEW problem. I hope what
I watched the press conference. Triple H talks about it, but
he's like, listen, there's just not time,
you know,
right? We're in the third quarter.
he's
We're in the third inning. All right,
we're in the third inning.
we're in the
The
third
bottom
inning.
of the third, Tim.
The women will be back. All right, you don't worry. We got plenty left of the
bottom of the
story to
third.
tell with the women.
So Hikaru Shida is your new AEW Women's Champion. All right, let's get into SmackDown so we can continue moving towards SummerSlam. LA Knight would defeat Sheamus. He's still over like crazy, and I really like the direction they're going with him as of last night, which we'll talk about next week. The Brawling Brutes versus the OC ends in a no contest because the Street Profits would come out, and they are dressed to the nines. They start attacking the good guys. The Street Profits have turned heel, and the crowd loved it. And after attacking everyone in the ring, out comes Bobby Lashley. The Hurt Business is reformed just with Street Profits and Bobby. It was great. It was awesome. Fans loved the heel turn of the Street Profits. I was also with them on this. I'm about it.
I think they need a couple more peeps in there.
Well, the Street Profits the Hurt Business before was only Bobby, then Cedric and Shelton. And then I guess MVP as the manager.
Yeah, they're missing a manager. They need a manager.
Yeah. I don't even know if MVP's still.
None of them can talk.
I don't remember if he came out with Omos during the.
I guess the Street
Profits are okay.
Yeah, but Bobby Lashley.
I think Street Profits are better at talking than Bobby. Yeah, I was gonna say they're better at talking than Bobby. But Bobby's kind of been away, so we'll see where this goes. They could become the next dominating faction on SmackDown. I wouldn't be surprised. Then we had a Paul Heyman segment, which Jey Uso would end up coming out. And this would eventually lead to the main event later. But before that, we had Grayson Waller effect with Bayley and Io Sky. Shotzi would end up coming out and chases Bayley out of the ring. Shotzi, like we said a few weeks ago, has shaved her head. She did this in real life because her sister was diagnosed with cancer, but they wrote it into the storyline of her kind of taking control of her own narrative and is now targeting Bayley. And then our main event was Jey Uso against his brother Solo Sikoa, and he would actually end up beating Solo. So that would wrap up SmackDown. Anything you need to add, Tim?
No, at this point, when they were closing out these shows for the week, I was pretty ready to get to SummerSlam. I just was like, man, let's just get there.
Me too.
Ready to see these matches.
Well, speaking of SmackDown, before we move forward, I showed you the TikTok video of the old theme song and intro. What a way to get you hyped for a show. Nothing gets you hyped like that old Beautiful People intro for SmackDown, man. And then it shatters and the fist punches through. That's great. It's good stuff.
Wrestling
was my heyday. That was the
wrestling was so sick.
Ruthless aggression.
It still is, but you know.
Not ruthless, the ruthless aggression era. Yeah, wrestling. I mean, we're doing a wrestling podcast. We gotta like it, but
I clearly like it still. I mean, I'm dedicating.
Yeah,
we've done. I've realized with almost 100 episodes, we've talked about wrestling straight for days in a row. If you added them all up, we could just leave all of our episodes playing, and it would take a few days.
An average of an hour a time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're coming up on 4 days.
Where you could just do a 24-hour loop.
We have 4 days of content.
You could do a 24-hour loop of the PW fan for 4 days.
If you want to torture yourselves and listen to our voices for over 24 hours, go for it.
Now, actually, what you want to do is the next time the next time you and your significant other are getting that special alone time in the bathroom, or not, maybe not in the bathroom. I don't know. I don't know why it had to be in the
I just
bathroom.
put
You
on,
just put on the
just put
PW
on
fan,
beat.
and you just hear me in the beginning saying, "Welcome, wrestling fans." That's really gonna get the mood going. And Booker Andy. Uh,
Well, let's
well,
move
anyway,
forward onto Rampage. I did get an update about 7 minutes ago. I just checked my phone. Jeremy's not going to be able to make it tonight, unfortunately. I wasn't able to do it last night, and he is not able to do it tonight. So we miss you, Jeremy. We will get your input on things next week.
sweet.
So it's just the Forster brothers today. Rampage, really quick. I don't know how much you saw of this. Again, I wish I had Jeremy's opinion on it, but Claudio Castagnoli and John Moxley would defeat best friends in a parking lot fight.
Yeah, okay, sorry. This is the match
This
that
sucked.
this is the match that I was
Yeah.
talking about. Okay, I was confused. This is the match that I
With the
said
van.
I did not like. That I was like, this is not for me. This is the one I went on my tangent about.
Wheeler Yuta comes out with a "Blood is Beautiful" T-shirt and try to light this barbed wire piece of wood on fire, but the fire goes out, and it's just, and all these fans are in this parking lot cheering. I'm just like, this is just fucking garbage.
Yeah, it
They
wasn't
hated
for.
it, man.
Guess it wasn't for
Wasn't for
us.
me and Tim. I think Jeremy probably liked it, but
Jeremy had already liked the video that they posted of it on Instagram before we even looked at it.
I
So
saw that. I saw that. I was gonna send it to you guys and be
I was
like,
like, Jeremy
"What the
loves
fuck?"
it.
But then I saw Jeremy liked it, and I was like, "Fuck."
That's why he needs to be here.
Like, oh man, I did not like this, and online people liked it. I did not, and you didn't either, and that's okay. We're men. We're allowed to not like parking lot fights.
We're not All right. Anyway,
We're not afraid to say we don't like parking lot fights. Anyway, me and
I
Tim are
don't
doing
like
a little ready to rumble, um, little play on words with it, but
I
fell
think
flat.
I think they know. If you're listening to this show, you know.
Which we've talked about that part in the past with Sting. It's the part with
Ready
Sting. All right, that's all you got.
Ready to Rumble is. I will agree with the Young Bucks on this. It's the best, worst wrestling movie of all time. It's amazing.
Fantastic. We were quoting it while we were out in Lancaster taking pictures.
It's also terrible.
And eating dinner.
Like, depending on how you watch it, but it's amazing.
Yeah. So one more show to get into before we get into SummerSlam. Let's talk about Collision. Collision opened up with Big Bill and Brian Cage taking on FTR for the tag team championships. I actually enjoyed this match.
I did too.
Considering
I thought it was
Big
really
Bill
good.
and Brian Cage, which I usually don't care for them.
I was
But
worried.
I mean, Brian Cage can move weirdly big, like crazy for a huge guy. He did a swanton to the outside, which was nuts. He was dressed. It felt like a take on one of the Road Warriors.
It was interesting.
But maybe I saw so maybe it was something different than what I. But it was good. It was good. They would end up losing though, and FTR would end up retaining their titles, but they would cut a promo afterwards, and basically they talked about the Young Bucks, and I believe each has one win over the other, and they want to have a rubber match with the Young Bucks at All In. That I'm excited for.
Yeah.
FTR Young Bucks one more time, I can get down with it.
It's about time, and I think it's fitting that they're going to do it in the big stadium. So
one
far,
thing I forgot to mention.
One thing I
Sorry,
like to do. One thing I like to do when you got these big shows coming up, and we're slowly getting to matches. So far, if I'm just looking at the card, you got Adam Cole versus MJF.
Well, don't say it yet, because I'm about to add one more. I'm about to add one more before you say that.
Okay.
So Samoa Joe would come out and cut a promo challenging CM Punk to All In.
Yeah, so the card so
So now
far
we got
for
3 matches.
80,000 plus, if everybody stays healthy, knock on wood. You got MJF versus Adam Cole, FTR versus the Young Bucks, and Samoa Joe versus CM Punk. Like right there, that's pretty freaking stacked already. So,
But then there's the rumored match: Will Ospreay versus Chris Jericho, because he's got to insert himself
why I don't understand this one.
into everything.
Why Chris Jericho?
I don't
I
either.
I want to see Will
Why not
Ospreay.
end it in Will Ospreay's backyard and have him and Omega go? They did it in Japan, then they did it in Kenny's backyard of Canada. Just end it in Will's backyard and have the
Yeah,
rubber
why
match.
wait, why wouldn't they have why wouldn't it be Kenny Osprey 3? That would
Is
be
it too
like
soon? I don't know.
it'd be like the crazy stacked card.
That's a way to pack people in.
I guess it would be too soon, wouldn't
Not
it?
Jericho and Osprey.
No, it's not too soon. Sometimes I mean
Jericho and
Backlash.
Osprey doesn't get me hyped.
Backlash, they do literally do the exact main event of WrestleMania like the next month.
I know. Yeah.
I mean, usually they just
Yeah.
sometimes put steps on it or like whatever. But I know why. Yeah, you could totally. Why not? Just do it. And not Chris. No, because Chris Jericho wants to be on the show. That's why. And he's like, I need somebody to. I need somebody we need to work with.
I don't know, man. Put him against Sammy Guevara. It's an easy story to tell. Gets both on. I don't know. I don't know.
Osprey
I don't
and
want Jericho
Sammy,
doing
or
anything.
Jericho and
nowadays.
Sammy.
Jericho and Sammy.
Yeah, that would work.
Easy story.
Well, how you're never gonna have a bigger show
I
than
don't want
this,
Jericho.
right? At least for a while. So why wouldn't you top off a lot of these stories that you've been telling for a few years? Why don't you put a stamp on some of them so that way you can start fresh? Like, when they did the DC reset, then all of a sudden Batman started back to like episode 1. You gotta sometimes you just gotta like clear the board. You gotta clear the board and start over.
Hard reset, man. Yeah. I don't know. But that hasn't been announced yet, so maybe it's not true. I hope to God it isn't. Okay, but speaking of the Young Bucks, one thing I wanted to add that I forgot to mention on Dynamite, I believe it was on Dynamite, maybe it was announced on Rampage for tomorrow night, is Young Bucks are gonna go 1-on-1 with the Hardy Boys. I don't know if that's the main event or not, but it's looking like it could be of Dynamite.
I'd like to see it because you know what, I want to see it before, and I'm not trying to like be like morbid, and I don't mean
I've seen it at Super Card of Honor in a ladder match, very good ladder match. But that was like 6 years ago, 7 years ago.
Could they just have a match?
It was the night before the Hardys returned at Mania. That's how
Could
long
they
ago
just
it was.
have a good tag team match? Like, could they do that without stuff?
Jeff looked better this past week. I'll say that on Rampage, he looked a lot better than he had the past couple of times he's been on TV. He was moving a lot better. I was just sorry. I was just thinking about that video I showed you of the guy rolling down the bottles. He's like, "Oh, this one's a car crash." And he was like, "Jeff Hardy." He's like, somehow
my-
still going. The bottle didn't break.
My God.
And then there was one that it was wine and it bursted right away. He's like, "Oh, red instantly." John Moxley.
Yes.
So, the Acclaim would have a sit down with Tony Schiavone talking about Billy Gunn taking off his boots. I don't know if he's actually retired or not. I don't know. I would think there'd be a better send off than that, but we got a cameo from Anthony Bowens.
Anthony Bowens.
And he said in there that, or Jeremy got a cameo, I should say, for his birthday from Anthony Bowens. And he talks in there, he's like, Daddy Ass isn't with us right now. And then Anthony Bowens was on, if you guys like Chris DiStefano, he was on the Chrissy Chaos podcast, and he talked a little bit about Billy Gunn hanging up the boots. So we'll have to see, but that's what this sit down interview with Tony Schiavone was basically about on Collision. Collision's still going strong for me weekly. Most people couldn't watch it this past weekend because it conflicted with SummerSlam. It just is what it is. You got to pick one. And I'm
Yep.
sorry, but SummerSlam's going to take precedent over Collision.
It's very true.
We had a promo from Christian backstage, which he kind of shit on his daughter a little bit. She was like, "Can I touch your belt?" And he's like, "Did you win this belt?" He's like, "Go get your mother." He's like, "Haven't even had a match in life."
I love that he's playing like he's like Cruella DeVille kind of like villain. Like he has like the turtleneck on and like he's like an evil
He's like,
rich
"This belt?" He's like,
stepdad.
"Did you win this belt?" It's like, first of all, you didn't win that belt, Christian, but um, yeah, it's funny. Christian's funny, man.
He's hilarious.
The main event though was CM Punk versus Ricky Starks. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat wasn't the main referee, though he would end up being the referee. He was more of a second pair of eyes to the referee. He would stand on the outside for most of the match, kind of watching, and he would take Ricky Starks's feet off the ropes a couple times. But I thought this was a really good match. It was for Punk's real AEW World Title, as he calls it. And the winner, though, would end up being CM Punk, and I believe Ricky Starks would end up attacking Ricky the Dragon Steamboat afterwards, which made Punk get a little mad. But I thought it was a great match. Punk's basically in the main event of every single Collision so far. What you think of the match? I think their feud might be done, but I'm not 100% sure.
I'd like to see the feud done. I thought it was a good match overall. I mean, I definitely knew Punk was going to go over. Yeah, I mean, I like Ricky Starks. I think he has a good future. I think that
I do too.
like this is probably like only the beginning for him. As far as like the actual work in the match, yeah, I thought everything like looked really good on my end. I didn't see anything. Not I mean, not that I'm like any expert in that type of thing, but yeah, I didn't see anything like oh no or hard botches or anything.
But that wraps up Collision. All right, let's get into SummerSlam. Me and Tim, as Tim mentioned before, watched together. Jeremy watched it on his own. The show opened up with Logan Paul versus Ricochet. Now, it was said that this was done so that Logan Paul could then leave, go from Detroit to, I believe, Vegas for his brother Jake Paul's fight against Nate Diaz. So that is, I believe, why it opened up the show, which he did end up showing up at that fight. So makes sense. Logan Paul versus Ricochet. I really like this match. This match was very good. It got, it gets Ricochet on the pay-per-view, and I thought it highlighted him better than a TV match with Ricochet could do. Also, you need a dance partner out there to look good, and look as athletic as Logan Paul is. I don't think he could do what they did, without having Ricochet as your dance partner in there. There was lots of stuff that I was surprised Logan could do, but they went toe to toe with one another, and the crowd seemed to really enjoy it. There was a lot of cool spots. I don't know if they go on.
I thought some of the spots were cool, which in this type of match you kind of knew that they were going to be, but I didn't really like the one spot that you sent me. Well, I mean, I saw it during the match, but I didn't. The one that you pointed out that you said that you didn't see the gosh,
Spanish Fly.
No, not that one. The buckshot over the top rope. I didn't think it looked good.
Oh,
it looked a little
he didn't land very well, but
it was kind of janky.
But I don't know. So Logan Paul would end up going over by using brass knuckles, and I don't know. Do you think they did that to protect Ricochet? It just seems odd that they would protect Ricochet, or was it more to get over Logan as a heel even more?
Probably to get more heat for him as a heel.
Yeah. But that's how Logan Paul would end up winning. but job well done to both these guys. You know, the crowd was hot for it. It was one of those matches that there was never like a dull moment. It was just kind of go, and I thought they built up to this match pretty well weekly. After that, which I might be the odd man out on this, but the next match, Cody versus Brock, was my favorite match of the night. To be honest,
that was the best match of the night. Why would you be the odd man out? How is that even possible? Someone wouldn't think.
Well,
that?
I don't know. Maybe people liked Roman and Jay, or they thought Seth versus Finn.
No. No, this is the match of the night.
So this was my favorite match. I thought Cody as a babyface, he does a really good job at selling it when like he's being destroyed by someone like Brock Lesnar. The story being told that they've been telling, like I said, over the past few months, is done really well. I mean, this isn't a thing about the whole match itself, what we've talked about. Cody can just take the F5 better than anyone on the roster because he puts them legs together when he gets spun. But everything about this match I thought was great. The way, Brock basically took control of the match for most of it, and then Cody, great comeback. And, I'm trying to remember how he won exactly.
Three crossroads in a row.
That's right.
And then Brock's
really enjoyed this match.
And then Brock's pants ripped. Literally
Brock's
almost
pants
off.
ripped. But afterwards, Brock shaking Cody's hand was not planned. That was all Brock on his own. And he acknowledged Cody Rhodes.
Yeah, pretty cool.
But it was not planned. So for Brock to do that, Brock doesn't have to do anything Brock doesn't want to do. For Brock to do that for someone and give you respect like that, I've never even really seen him do it with Roman.
He was selling so.
Got to be a testament.
He was selling so good for him too.
He's one of the best sellers. He should be on Mount Rushmore if you could add a couple more people.
Oh, Brock's great.
But I was just watching while we're on Brock. I was watching the news episode of This Is Awesome, and the news episode is the most awesome returns, and one on there was Brock's return in 2012. You know,
yeah,
he took out Cena.
So sick.
Or 2011.
I remember that night. It was awesome.
But it made me think because you continuously watched. I was like on and off for a little bit over the years. What do you think Brock would have been like, or how he would have fit in if he had stayed and re-signed another multi-year deal during those years between him leaving and him coming back?
I think a lot of things happen. I don't think JBL gets the same push that he did because JBL filled a big role. They needed a big villain heel.
You think we get a King Booker? I think we get a Brock versus Batista, which never happened.
Yeah, you get that match eventually. That honestly, I think Brock and Batista would have been the feud that would have carried it, and then Cena and Orton also being in there. Those four guys would have carried it all the way through up until the, what we're getting in.
I would have even liked to see Brock versus that version of Taker, because we didn't get that till later.
Mm-hmm.
But when Taker's new version was fresh, he came back at the Mania that Brock left.
Yeah, when Taker, which I thought during WrestleMania 20, I was like, God, the Undertaker must be like old, and he like wasn't really that old.
No, dude, he was like 30s, late 30s or something. But then you could also get Brock versus Edge, Brock versus Triple H during this time.
Yeah,
Brock versus Jeff Hardy. Brock versus who else was on top at the time? I don't know. Randy. There's a lot of, but then it would have gotten to like a silliness. And Punk, and it would have eventually though gotten to like the PG era, and like I don't know how he would have fit in. So maybe it just worked out that he like came back kind of towards the end of PG era.
He was the first guy when he split Cena open in their Extreme Rules match after he came back. That was the first time anybody had seen blood in a really long time because they were already deep into
Gotcha.
they were deep into the PG stuff at that point.
Yeah, so maybe it was best that he left and he came back.
Yeah.
I still missed, and maybe I'm just an older school, like early 2000 wrestling fan. I love the way Brock used to wrestle. He wrestles completely different now. He wrestles like a beast now. But
I
when he was
felt
the next big thing,
he moved more like his old self in this match because he was selling and like running around and not just he was still doing suplexes, but it wasn't the whole match.
mhm, yeah. Um, I just remember at one point when Cody was doing the springboard kicks off the rope, you were like, "Man, Brock's just selling for Cody." Like,
Yeah, it was awesome.
so yeah, it was my favorite match. Cody ends up winning, and you know, he's back on track going towards Roman, is what it feels like. After that, we had the Slim Jim Battle Royal. Last to come out entrance wise was LA Knight, big pop for him, and there was a secret entrant that wasn't talked about. It was Omos, but in the end, it would come down to Sheamus and LA Knight in the Battle Royal, and your winner, LA Knight.
Yeah.
Fans were very excited. I was hyped. Most people, I mean, if you're in the wrestling world and you're on TikTok or anything, you know how hyped people are, and you're probably hyped for it too. Get on the LA Knight bandwagon.
Do it.
Um, so they are, we'll talk more about it next week, but they seem to be pushing him. Our next match, and I feel bad for not liking him. We talked about it earlier. Ronda Rousey versus Shayna Baszler. I wish they had just a regular match, because I liked the build, up to
Yeah.
this. But so the build to it was good. Then they had this match that was MMA rules. The crowd, I saw videos from the crowd. The crowd was flat. It was like the bathroom break match. You watch MMA and say UFC is the biggest company, obviously. So when you watch that and you're watching people roll around, grappling one another, it works. It works in that capacity. It works when you're watching UFC. When you're in a football stadium and it's a wrestling ring and you're just rolling around grappling, it doesn't get people excited. One thing I will say about this match is, or a couple things, it was Ronda's last match, I believe, in WWE. She's never submitted, not even in UFC, not in WWE. She submitted to Shayna Baszler, so that puts Shayna Baszler, her friend, over. So she did the job for her.
That's cool.
So now Shayna's whole thing is she's the baddest woman in WWE. And I really hope she's able to get back to how she was in NXT, because I don't know about you, Tim. I was a big fan of that version of Shayna when she just destroyed people.
So do you think we get Shayna versus Rhea? But that's two heels.
Who's the other champion right now? Io. But she's on a different show. Well, I just spoiled what we're talking about. I don't know. I think you shouldn't rush it, but I hope she's on television more and is used, a lot better than she has been since coming up to the main roster.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just didn't like this match. A lot of people didn't like this match. I'm sure Ronda, for the thing is, the kind of match makes sense for who they are. It just doesn't work, and not all ideas work. And maybe they should have tried this kind of match out on like a live event or something. But sorry guys, I'm plugging my computer in. It just didn't work for this.
I feel like
That's just
worked MMA fights just always look bad.
Yeah.
And it's also
so
weird
moving
'cause
forward,
you're clearly telling the audience You're clearly telling the audience that the other shit that we're doing is not real. But here's us really fighting. I don't know.
Well, I will tell you, there were some shots in there though that even though they're friends and even though it's a worked match, I mean, Shayna came out on Raw last night with a fucking black eye, and that might have been from that knee that Ronda did that looked like it just popped her right in the face.
Yeah, that was
There were
brutal.
some hard actual shots that were done during the match. Our next match, though, after that, and I actually went back and watched it the next day because there was just things going on over at Tim's house that, we weren't paying attention during this match. Drew McIntyre versus Gunther. This match was actually really good. It was hard hitting. It was just two big European guys going at it. I wouldn't say it was like a big move fest, but there were, big moves in there, though. Gunther likes to go the top rope. Drew McIntyre flips out of the ring, even though they're both, big guys. I think it was what you would expect, though. It wasn't anything crazy of a match, and it wasn't bad. It was just a solid, good wrestling match. Nothing bad about it. I'd say not a single thing bad, but nothing crazy.
I think it's typical of what you would expect from these two guys. Very physical, a
Yeah,
lot of chops, stuff that looks like it's going to hurt.
yeah. But after that, we had the World Heavyweight Championship match. It was Seth Rollins versus Finn Balor. I also have liked this build over the past couple months. Seth Rollins would end up coming out wearing the vest that he wore in the match that he injured Balor years ago. And so that was a nice little touch. But this match, we had seen this match at Money in the Bank, but we got to see it one more time. I thought it was good. Damian Priest would end up coming out, and he would hit Seth with the briefcase behind the ref's back at one point, which would lead to Balor. I believe he pedigreed Seth, actually.
Yeah, he did.
And they got me. I thought that he had it won there after the hit by the briefcase, but he did not. In the end, Damian Priest would walk around and throw in his briefcase and walk to the other side and distract the ref. But while Balor was going to grab the briefcase to use as a weapon, I would say, Seth would end up curb stomping Finn onto the briefcase and getting the win. But you couldn't tell in the end if Damian put it there on purpose, knowing that would happen, or what. So right now they're playing it to know there's friction again between Finn and Damian Priest over this whole thing. Of course, Finn blames Damian. Damian thinks he did nothing wrong. But like Tim said with Gunther and Drew, this match with Finn and Seth is exactly what you would expect from two guys of this caliber. It was.
I really like
good.
this match. I still think Brock and Cody was better, but this was very good.
Yes. So our second to last match was a triple threat for the WWE Women's Championship. It was Asuka, the defending champion, versus Charlotte Flair versus Bianca Belair. I say this every time. Triple threats are weird. Sometimes they seem like a mess during the match, and other times it seems like everything's clicking. To me, this was one of those times where it was on and off throughout the match. But everyone in the match is really good on their own. And so, you try to put it just becomes chaos. There's too many moving parts sometimes, in my opinion. Though I did go back and rewatch it the next day because, again, things were going on that it didn't have my, full undivided attention. But I did enjoy it overall. I thought, though, it might have gone a little bit longer than I would have liked. But in the end, I believe Asuka blinded Charlotte with her mist by, I think, rubbing her eyes in it, and Bianca would end up rolling up God, I want to say Charlotte, maybe even. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but either way, Bianca would end up getting the win
Asuka got rolled
and
up.
becoming the new champ. But Asuka got rolled up. Okay. Um, maybe Asuka blinded Charlotte, which stopped whatever what was going on, and then Bianca would roll up Asuka,
Yeah.
which I expected Asuka to take the pin if she wasn't gonna win. But shortly after Bianca won the belt, Io Sky's music would come and play. Her and Bailey would come out. Io would cash in, which I predicted. If you listened to our episode last week, that Io Sky, I said she would cash in on Asuka, but either way, Booker Andy said she would cash
Look
in,
here,
and
Andy.
she did, and she won. She won, and Io Sky, which is the new champion, which I am happy with. I think Io Sky is great. I was a fan of her in NXT, and I feel like she's gotten a quick push, but it all started with how over I think she was during Backlash in Puerto Rico against Bianca Belair, if you remember. How the crowd was booing Bianca, but they were cheering Io. I think that's when maybe this decision might have been made for her to win Money in the Bank and then go from there.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was definitely cool and definitely surprised me.
So let's get into the main event. Something happened during this match that I did not see coming. It was Roman Reigns versus Jey Uso. They've been telling this story
They really got us
for a
in this
while
one.
now. This was it was a tribal combat match, which basically
It was a
is a
hardcore
no
match.
disqualification winner. The only thing that makes it tribal combat is the winner becomes a champion and the tribal chief. That's what makes it tribal combat. That's it. Overall, very good match. You know, at times I think they did get us, even though I wouldn't think Jey Uso would win. There were times when I'm like, he could right here. If they wanted to do that, you know, I'd read. Again, I use Ringside News. I read that someone asked a writer one time, you know, what is the plan for when Roman loses the title? And the guy apparently had said, whenever Roman fucking wants to.
Yeah.
You know, I think him and Paul have a big say. And if Roman wanted to drop the belt to one of his family members, I can see him doing that before maybe someone else that he doesn't think deserves it. But Roman would end up winning this match, and that would be because someone would interfere. They would come out in a hoodie and pull Jay out of the ring when we all thought he could have possibly won. Or that was the idea. And it would end up being his brother Jimmy.
So the flip flop.
Yeah, so Jimmy
he
has
stayed
turned
with
on his
him.
twin brother now.
He stayed with him to be babyface and go against the bloodline, and then he flip flopped on him again. Double turn.
So, question for you, Tim. First of all, what you think of the match before we get into what might happen next?
I like the match. I'm not crazy, like usual, not crazy about tons of hardcore spots, but I get that there had to be like some fierce
There
stakes on
wasn't
the
too
line.
much.
Yeah, there had to be some
Though Jay
fierce.
did whip the shit out of Roman with that strap.
Yeah, and then the kendo spit stick looked like it hurt really bad when Roman was using it. But no, I mean, I overall enjoyed the match and the story that was told. They really got me. They swerved me, bro. I did not think that was going to be.
I didn't think that would ever break up the Usos.
Yeah, it's wild.
So my question for you is: do you think Jimmy is doing this on his own, or do you think he sided with Roman? You know, do you think it's just a jealousy thing? He doesn't want to be in the bloodline, but he doesn't want Jay to have it.
Nah, he's gonna be with the bloodline.
He's gonna rejoin.
With a
He wants to be main event Jimmy instead of main event Jey Uso.
Mm-hmm.
I saw something online that this would actually be kind of cool if it gets to this point for Survivor Series. If someone was like, "What if it's a fatal 4-way?" And by this time, you know, Roman's messed up things with Solo. It's a fatal 4-way to become Tribal Chief, Solo, Jimmy, Jay, and Roman.
Then Roman,
Storytelling wise,
when it's 2054 and Roman just won the intergalactic title. Dun, 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 dun.
his music hits again every Mania 20 and in 2054. It's just like, all right, one of the funniest videos. But there was the press conference afterwards, and I don't know if you saw the entire thing, but I know you read some of the things that were said. Heyman was out there by himself. Roman was not out there. Heyman had a lot to say, and you know what's funny is that after Mania, they said they're in the third inning of this whole story, and now it's SummerSlam, and he said they're at the bottom of the third inning. He said, "Wait till you get," or he said, "Wait till you see the fourth."
Like, God, we got 5
How much
more
longer you
innings.
can get? Look, this is the thing. Like, Roman said at one point at the press conference after Mania, it's like, if you think basically that you can have the highest box offices and it not be me, like, if you think you can do that, it's like, then, you know, you should be champion. Until then, until you can prove that you're this big money draw, because every single gate ever since Roman, I mean, this was the biggest SummerSlam gate of all time. It just keeps getting more and more, and guess who's the top guy? It's Roman. So whether you think, oh, is this dragging on or not, it's like maybe we should just wait it out because they're still crushing it.
Well, how did you feel about SummerSlam overall? Did you enjoy it?
I did. Overall, yes. If you're going to say overall, I did enjoy it. There wasn't anything that kind of like the percentage of things that I say didn't like here or there did not ruin the pay-per-view for me at all. So, how about you?
I enjoyed it. No, I thought it was a good SummerSlam and a big epic ending, and I can't wait to see the fourth inning. What do you say we jump over to Classic Show of the Week? Is that cool?
Yes, take us out, Tim.
All right. The Classic Show of the Week this week, just to keep it in the tradition of the month, is SummerSlam 1999. So let me take you through some of these matches here. You got Too Cool versus LOD. You got Gangrel versus Dustin Rhodes. You got D'Lo Brown versus Val Venus. You got X-Pac versus Jeff Jarrett. You got Edge versus Mark Miro. I believe this is Edge's debut match, so that's pretty interesting. And then Ken Shamrock versus Owen Hart in the Lions Den match. Speaking of MMA matches, that very, very weird that all these years later they did another MMA style match at SummerSlam. Road Dogg. Handicap match, New Age Outlaws versus Mankind, Triple H versus The Rock, and Stone Cold versus The Undertaker. So that's a solid lineup. You cannot go wrong. Well, that wraps up another exciting episode of the PW Fan. Thank you for joining us for our SummerSlam 2023 Spectacular, and we can't wait to be back next week to talk all things pro wrestling with you, the fans. Until then, keep loving wrestling and take care.
We'll be right back.